Hello and welcome back to my 10 favorite people. Hope you're doing well. What a strong weekly candle for Bitcoin, and it's really no surprise if we look at the ETF data for Friday. Thursday was already impressive at over 400 million in net inflows and only 100 million leaving Grayscale, but somehow Friday was even better at over 540 million in net inflows and only 50 million leaving Grayscale. And of course, what happens when you combine strong ETF inflow data and a very strong weekly close for the S&P 500, giving Bitcoin a nice risk-on backdrop, you end up with a very strong weekly candle for Bitcoin. And if this candle were to close anything like this in 5 hours from now when it closes, it becomes incredibly likely at the very least that we see at least 1 week of continuation next week. And that will be the moment of truth to decide if we can hold this breakout going into the halving, or if it ends up being a false breakout and we fall back below 49,000, which of course is exactly what we saw for the futures ETF launch. And now, of course, I'm not saying things have to play out the exact same way, and I'm definitely not saying we're going to have a 50% sell-off, but the price action between these two launches are incredibly similar. Not only did both see a nice consolidation before the breakout going into the actual launch, which of course was very similar to what we saw for the futures ETF, quick consolidation, breakout going into the launch, and then everybody front ran it. So we saw a brief sell the news event, which came down and perfectly retested the breakout. And what do you know, if you look at the spot ETF, sell the news event came down and perfectly retested that breakout level. The futures ETF then went up to put in a new high. And of course, sentiment got euphoric and everybody started talking about 100,000 per Bitcoin. And then once all the shorts got squeezed and all the longs started FOMOing in on the breakout, we saw a break back below and then put in a low below the previous swing low that we had earlier in the price action. And of course, there's no guarantee this is going to play out the exact same way, but sentiment has followed a similar cycle. Everybody was mega bullish at the launch, then everybody was incredibly scared at the lows, expecting us to go a lot lower thanks to Grayscale. And of course, all it took was 3 green candles, and all of a sudden everybody is bullish again. And best believe if we see a breakout above 49,000, a lot of FOMO and euphoria will re-enter the market, and that doesn't mean we can't continue higher. I'll just be paying very close attention to whether Bitcoin can maintain that breakout or if it ends up being a false breakout. And of course, a lot of that is going to rely very heavily on the ETF inflow data we see next week. Because we have seen a lot of variance in the ETF data. The inflows started out very strong. They then slowed down quite a bit as Grayscale sped up. They then sped up again as Grayscale slowed down. They got very low in the first week of February. And just because they've sped up again recently doesn't mean we can start projecting the rest of 2024 like I see a lot of influencers doing, saying things like if we continue to see $500 million of daily inflows, it's going to be 50 billion by the end of 2024. That's a very dangerous way of thinking because we could just see the inflows slow down once again. So the week ahead should definitely be exciting, especially if we see Bitcoin get above 49,000. Of course, something else that could ruin things for Bitcoin in the short term is we've seen the S&P 500 go up in 14 of the last 15 weeks. And we've discussed many times that seasonality wise, late February and March are the worst months for the S&P 500 in election years, alongside September and October. And if we do see the S&P 500 finally have its overdue correction / consolidation, that could also coincide nicely with a pullback for Bitcoin, especially because we know they're incredibly correlated, and I don't see Bitcoin rallying to new all-time highs while the S&P 500 puts in a correction now that it's overdue for one, and it aligns nicely with election year seasonality. And of course, no matter what ends up happening, my plan remains unchanged. I'm still 50% cash, and that might seem crazy to a lot of you, but I promise it's for very good reason. If this does end up being a false breakout and Bitcoin gets back below 49,000, I'm going to be very happy I have this cash allocation because it's likely I'll be able to accumulate at lower prices. However, if this time does end up being different, which I think is unlikely, but it's always a possibility, and Bitcoin breaks out and maintains that breakout and continues into the halving, I'm then going to be very happy I have that cash, because it means that it's time for me to go risk on and start buying some altcoins, because normally once Bitcoin breaks above its 618 Fibonacci retracement, it's a pretty quick move to previous all-time highs, and that's when altcoins really start to go crazy, which is why I'll be happy I have this cash position ready to take advantage of those new altcoin opportunities if this time really is different. And what I mean when I say if this time is different is because Bitcoin has never closed above its 618 Fibonacci retracement before the halving. However, when it does close above the 618 Fibonacci retracement, it ends up going to new all-time highs in 2 to 3 months. And we've seen that in every single cycle. We saw it in 2012, we saw it in 2016, we of course saw it in 2020. Once Bitcoin closes above the 618 Fibonacci retracement on the monthly chart, it's a quick move to all-time highs. And of course, this hasn't happened yet, but it's still a scenario I'm prepared for. And of course, the 618 Fibonacci retracement is that 48,500 level. Show me a couple of weekly closes above that level, or even better, show me a monthly close above that level, and I'll be targeting new all-time highs. And of course, I'll be preparing my altcoin portfolio, because when Bitcoin puts in a new all-time high, that's when altcoins really take off. And you can see it very clearly on this chart here. This is Bitcoin in orange and Total 3 in blue. Total 3 is of course the crypto market cap minus Bitcoin and Ethereum. And notice how Bitcoin broke its all-time high on December of 2020. Just 3 to 4 months later, the altcoin market took off and broke its all-time high very quickly, and of course put in way more gains than Bitcoin did. And the reason why my risk on portfolio is majority altcoins is because I don't think there's a lot of benefit buying Bitcoin above 50,000. And of course, I'm not talking to those of you that are going to dollar cost average forever and you're holding Bitcoin so it can go to $1 million in 10 years. That's a very different strategy. I mean, from a cycle swing trade perspective, I'm not interested buying Bitcoin at these prices or in the 50,000 plus range, because to double my money, it needs to go above 100,000. And that's why I'm much happier buying altcoins, because a Bitcoin breakout confirms a risk on environment and there's way more upside potential in altcoins, which is why I have this cash ready to deploy for the risk on portfolio if this time is different and Bitcoin sees that breakout. And speaking of some altcoins, I still think Ethereum's chart looks very good. We had that false breakout above 2400, closed back below it. Things looked very terrible. And of course, Ethereum is always good at looking incredibly terrible on the chart before it ends up doing a 180 and breaking out to the upside again. And now that we're above 2400, especially if the weekly close closes above 2400, things could look good for Ethereum in the short term. And you guys know I'm super bullish going into the spot ETF. Whether it gets approved or not, I think speculation on it will lead Ethereum higher. As for Solana, a little bit harder to gauge. You could say this is like one gigantic cup and handle, and this was just reaccumulation before a squeeze higher. But with such a quick consolidation after such a strong move, there's still a high likelihood, in my opinion, that Solana ends up putting in a lower high and comes down to consolidate lower. And of course, so much of what Solana does and what Ethereum does is going to depend greatly on whether Bitcoin ends up having a true breakout here, or if it ends up being a false breakout like what we saw in 2021. And of course, so much of that is going to depend on the S&P 500 and on ETF inflows next week, which is why I think next week should be incredibly entertaining. And of course, we're going to keep an eye on rate cut expectations. They're still getting pushed back to May for now, so maybe the economy can hold on and risk assets can party for a little bit longer. Of course, my general macro strategy is to dollar cost average in 2024 at good prices. I don't know if it's going to be altcoins or my core holdings yet. Of course, as I explained, it depends on what Bitcoin does, but I will start to become a lot more cautious as we get closer to rate cuts, because we do know the Fed only cuts rates once something bad happens in the economy, and that should be bad for risk assets. And that's what we saw for Bitcoin in the previous cycle. And that's why my general plan for 2024 is accumulation at good prices. And I think the real party will happen in 2025 once we see a lot of these rate cuts actually come in and we see money printing come back and stimulus start to re-enter the economy. And that's why this is my general strategy. But anyway, it should be an exciting week. Let me know what you expect. Will Bitcoin actually hold this breakout and continue higher going into the halving, which of course means this time is in fact different? Or will it end up being a fake out and all the FOMO buyers get punished just like they were in 2021, because this time is in fact not different and Bitcoin will not get a close above the 618 before the halving, and this is going to be like previous cycles and we instead enter a reaccumulation phase. And of course, some of that is going to depend on ETF inflows and on the S&P 500, but I'm curious to see what you guys think in terms of what's more likely for Bitcoin, because I think both are incredibly likely to happen, but I think the false breakout is still more likely in my opinion, even though this chart looks incredibly solid as of right now, and we're going to have to see tomorrow's candle to conclude what's more likely to happen. But anyway, thank you so much for the support on the recent videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.